Welcome back to Arguing Agile. I was on a team once, and the director of the department for all the teams would go up to individual developers, and you would always know that he's about to introduce a work item that he wants done under the radar, because he would walk up and he would say, "Hey, buddy."
The old, "Hey, buddy." That doesn't happen much though, right?
It happens all the time.
Exactly.
In product management, we call this thing the shadow backlog.
The shadow backlog is real, and it will haunt you. So this is your podcast. You're going to learn a lot today, hopefully.
The first thing we want to talk about was this informal request, this old pat on the back. "Hey, buddy, you're such a great..." You use this example on other podcasts too. You're like, "You're such a great developer. You can knock this out in 5 minutes," or whatever your estimate is. I'll just say real high and then cut it in half.
So I have referenced this before, I think at least a couple of times. This is what I call ego stroking, basically, right? Somebody's going to come to you and say, "You're awesome. You can do this. You got this." And it won't take you long. And before you know it, days go by and you're still in the middle of this mess. Definitely, that is one way to spot what is coming at you in your shadow backlog, because it's not defined up front in your actual backlog. And you're working on this stuff, right? Somebody told you to or asked you to. Sometimes it's a bit more formal. This CEO or COO, somebody fairly high up, CXO, they'll come to you and say, "I got to ask you to do this for me because we're going to show this at a conference that's taking place. And it's important for the company," right? So you do it because, they're management. That's another way. It's like, "Hey, buddy," but it's more like with a tone of, "You will do this.
Hey, buddy, or else."
Yeah, exactly. So that's another way of spotting it's the source of items that are coming into your shadow backlog.
I've seen direct managers in matrix organizations where the product management people and the developers are owned by different people, different hiring managers in the organization. Yeah. And then the hiring manager says, "Well, this is my person. They're just going to knock out this thing real quick and then they'll be available but they haven't told anyone."
Right. It's taking time out of their day. Yeah. And they don't talk to product people because of that reason you mentioned, right? They're completely separate. You said they have their people, their resources, as they call them often, that are seconded to the project. So, yeah, they'll pull their favors, and that's another way to see shadow backlog. You don't actually see it, though, ironically, right? It's there kind of lurking, and it's taking bandwidth away from the team.
The other part of this informal request ad hoc system of interrupting people, basically, that I've seen is I told this story on a podcast once a million years ago. We were integrating a vendor product into our mobile product. At the vendor company we were using, they had a development team that was producing our product, and somebody thought it would be a good idea to have a shared Slack channel, our development team and their development team together. But what I believe it ended up being managers and project people and whatever. What would end up happening is multiple times throughout the day, somebody would ping our developers in that channel and say, "Hey, this API request is coming back with this. Can you change it so it's like this? Or this mobile transaction is passing these variables. We want to add another one. Can you make sure that you're accepting it on your side?" I can't remember what it was like. Little things like that. And then our developers would go in and start making changes, and then you would say, like, "Hey, why are you still working on that? Like, I thought we were releasing that." "Oh no, the vendor team asked me to add one little change."
Without discussion with the product people, none of that, right?
Without discussion.
And that is very prevalent. I mean, anytime you have a channel that's open like that, it really needs to be very carefully curated. Otherwise, you are going to run this risk, especially if stakeholders are involved, because that's their conduit into the team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They're like water. They're taking the path of least resistance because they are perceiving going through the quote normal backlog channel as, overly burdensome,
prohibitive even sometimes.
Or overly bureaucratic.
Yeah.
"Oh, I got to have an hour-long meeting with your product manager. I don't want to do that." Or they just don't know what the correct process, right?
Yeah, that's very likely they don't know. But just like water, I mean, it will fill up the space that's there. Let's just briefly talk about ad hoc. Right. So ad hoc, it's fine to have ad hoc, right? You solicit feedback from your customers,
Sure.
and they don't have to be cadenced or anything like that. They can give you the feedback at any point, but it needs to be triaged properly, right? It needs to be carefully incorporated into the main backlog so it doesn't end up just being worked on out of sight, out of mind in a shadow backlog. So I don't want us to kind of say clamp down on ad hoc. That's not what we're saying here, right? We're just saying there's a right way to do things. So yeah, I forgot what we were going on about before
I was going to
that.
say, we were just about to say, it sounds like you're not a team player when your boss comes to you and says, I need you to do this one thing. And then you say, have you talked to my product manager? Like he would be interested to know what, when it comes to yearly review time,
Same thing could happen if you say, well, I request you to go talk to my Scrum Master. Same thing.
Same thing, except that we can fire the Scrum Masters. They work for development.
Right. That's true. So there is that real possibility that you're not seen as a team player. You're not doing what someone's asking you for. You're not a true collaborator.
That's right.
Whereas the reality is you should really be not doing that work. Right?
Listen, we got to move fast. We can't always be talking about process this, process that. That's the other way I've heard that.
Yeah.
So it's very gaslighty, but
speed is everything.
That's how I've heard people justify this what we're talking about now, this informal request system of you scratch my back and I don't fire you. There's no benefit in it. I mean, it actually is making your day worse because now you're failing on everything else you committed to.
Right. So. Yeah, there's really nothing good that can come out of it.
If I'm going to be a little more like the informal request network, altering the products and whatever, like I'll be harsh on that one because rightfully so. Like I should be. Workarounds and quick fixes or hot fixes or break fixes. Basically, something breaks in production, and we now have to have the fire drill to put it out. This is one of the categories where, like, of course we should stop what we're doing and fix that. I feel nobody gets into trouble with prioritization with this one. I feel where people get into troubles when they have systems where this stuff happens all the time. Now you can't meet any of your commitments because you have no control of this.
Well, that speaks volumes to the quality or lack of it, right?
It does, yeah.
Of the process as well as the product, maybe. So, but there is something else there. Like if you're fixing things in production, okay, you have to fix things, so fine, do it. But at the same time, don't neglect documenting things, right?
Yeah.
Don't neglect reflecting back and figuring out why is it? Could we have avoided it? How can we not repeat that again? So all of those things have to follow. And typically you find that because you're at the tyranny of time, right, they don't follow because you're just break fixing after break fixing.
Right. Well, that's the thing about quick fixes is they're done quickly. Who's to say that that ever makes it back to the permanent code? Like I have seen quick fixes that are applied in production, and then the next time a release rolls out into production, the thing gets broken again.
Because it was never really fixed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that for sure, especially in products where you can do that through scripting or some other means, or manipulating SQL or whatever it is, right? So that's really masking the symptom. Yeah. Right? It's not fixing the root cause. Yeah. But again, it comes down to sound engineering principles there. Right? If you're going to fix it, but then do a proper fix, put it into the code, test it, and all of that, right? Yeah. Unless it's pressure tested before it releases again, you're going to find that it's never really fixed.
But allow me to make the situation way worse. So now our team that does feature development, we say, well, we want to unburden them just to be purely feature development. So we're going to hire this other team that they're just going to do break fixes in production because it's become such a problem. So now this other team that is constantly in the code, this new team doing break fixes, maybe an offshore team, is doing break fixes and responding to support issues. They're in the code base fixing issues that come up, while the other team is introducing new features into the code at the same time. So both those teams are working at the same time. And now you see where you're on the Titanic at this point and like knowing what's about to happen, right?
That's a better analogy. I was thinking, well, you're trying to change the tires on a car while it's being driven on the highway at 60 miles an hour.
You're trying to change tires on the Titanic.
Yeah, that's right. While it's still halfway in the water. No, it's pandemonium at that point because people aren't talking to one another, especially if you have dedicated teams. So how do you survive in that long term? I
just can't wait for the person that's going to comment on this and be like, Brian, that scenario is ludicrous. No one will ever do that. Like, I only bring that up because I lived through that exact experience.
I like to talk to that person because it happens all the time.
Oh boy, it's so unstable. Like, quality is so bad that we have to get another team that their job is just to do like quality improvements, basically bug fixes. They'll wrap it as quality improvements. I've seen they don't have entire teams to do it, but I have seen them dedicate one developer. That's the on-call developer this week. Their job is just to catch all the bugs and garbage that blows up.
So in the former, where we have a separate team or even a developer, it leads to this behavior from your development team that let's just scaffold it up, and if it breaks, they'll fix it, right? And that's terrible, because you're releasing code that's not of quality to begin with. I'm a big fan of you build it, you run it.
Oh, you're not a big fan of
throw it over the wall?
We'll fix it and document it later?
Later never comes.
Oh man, somehow this needs to be a separate podcast. I want to let my feature team just develop features and put all the maintenance and refactoring off to this other team. Like whoever thought that was a good idea, like it needs its own podcast. I don't know what it would be called.
Doing a whole podcast on that because there's so much there. It's not just people that fix your stuff. It's also potentially people that are putting your code into production if your team is not, right? Mm-hmm. These teams will go fix things quickly because, well, they're the ones in charge of putting things into production. And if it breaks, it looks bad on them. So they fix it up. But it never gets back to the dev team and doesn't get back to the main branch. And that's the problem.
Learnings don't get back, nor does the skill get back, which leaves you with a whole nother problem.
Correct. And so potentially you could have not a shadow backlog, but multiple shadow backlogs.
We're already very, very, very close to be talking about technical debt right now. So let's just launch straight into the technical debt backlog at more than one place. So I'm not trying to call anyone out, but at more than one place, developers, some places the developers will revolt and say like, we must fix this. We can't wait anymore. Sometimes they'll try to be proactive, overly cautiously proactive to say like, oh, we've got to have a completely separate roadmap of how we're going to fix technical debt and improve the systems and bring them up to whatever, spec or current version, whatever it is. So they'll try to have their own parallel backlog because usually the people that lead engineering at a high level in an organization, they're pretty much charged with like, hey, how come we have all these systems that are falling over? They get pointed out to say you're doing a bad job
because they're the ones looking at quality dashboards and things.
I mean, in reality, it's a partnership between engineering and product management that resolves the technical debt. So it's kind of not fair just to point at the engineering leadership to say you're not doing a good job, because you could have product people that completely don't understand what it takes to keep the system moving. They're completely disconnected from what's happening with the technology under hood, and they just, I was going to say go to lunch all day, but also they just ask for features. They don't want to do any technical under hood stuff. They don't understand it. They don't want to talk about it. I've been in a room with executives actually that are like this. They only want features. They don't want to talk about the systems under hood. They don't want to pay for things. They don't want to spend any development time on it. And honestly, like if you start talking about anything like this, sometimes you go into the weeds to talk about how a feature would be solutioned, like people do, right? They'll zone out. Like I had a guy once that would get up and practice his golf swing. He would do shadow golf swings in a conference room when the developers would start talking. I don't know if I'm going to keep this story in the podcast. It's so good I can't stop myself from telling it though. So he's an executive, right? They brought him in, I think because he had like deep ties with a particular customer we were trying to sell anyway. And they're like, we don't know what to do with you. You're going to run development department. So he became in charge of the development department. This C-level exec. I don't remember what his title was. Anyway, this guy comes in. He could not care about technology at all. He would practice his golf swing. I still remember him practicing his golf swing.
Development doesn't care about technology.
What can go wrong? Him practicing. Well, that just tells you what the company thought about the development department. But I still remember him practicing his golf swing while we were talking about something highly technical that needed to be solved before we could launch some feature or scale the system or do something basically. And he could care less, playing golf in a corner. He didn't last, surprisingly. I remember talking to somebody years later after that guy had left who was like a senior developer who worked their way up in that company. And I was like, man, that guy, what a piece of work, that guy. And then I remember the person who was the developer was like, actually, he wasn't that bad. I'm like, what are you talking about? What, were you on a different planet than I am? Actually, wasn't that bad. I think wasn't that bad means I can do whatever technical debt I want, and he won't challenge it because he has no idea.
Right.
I think that's what it meant.
He would either ignore what I'm doing and implicitly just approve it, or he'll rubber stamp it. He'll just say, yeah, that's fine. Sounds good.
I think that's what he meant by he wasn't that bad, is that he didn't get into details or challenge you about details because he couldn't.
Right.
But again, that guy had no business in business at all. That was my opinion on him, and I still feel that way.
He's probably out there winning the U.S. Open right now.
We may or may not be returning from a segue right now about golf. But the refactoring in order to solve technical debt, everyone can pretty much understand. Like developers, like they see it happen. They if you're not going to give them the space to do it and it's painful enough, they're just going to go do it themselves.
Sure.
Completely understand that. No problem. But the underhood optimization that you could basically spend forever on, like that is the other place that I've seen this.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. So
tuning. Right.
Tuning and then forever refining and polishing. Right. Gilding the lily.
Right.
So yeah, definitely have seen that. Especially, so there's two sides to this though, right? I have seen some developers that are so passionate about their work that they just want to keep improving that. Mm-hmm. It can be better. I can make it 2% faster. Yeah. I can optimize the queries. Like nobody really is complaining about it. right?
Yeah.
But they're into it. There's that side of it. The other side of it is
save that one, because that one, when we talk about personal tasks,
personal
to-do
that's definitely in that
perfect.
category.
Is you guys are not taking this feature seriously enough. I'm gonna go show you how good it could be. I've seen people spend nights and weekends doing that.
For sure.
You're not gonna get time in the backlog. We've talked about it. That ship has sailed, and they go do it anyway on nights and weekends. And now they're burning
nights
themselves.
is burning them out, right? But
Yeah.
I've seen people do it during their work days, and they're not doing the committed features, right? So there's two sides to it. I'll just briefly go back to this idea of having the break fixes under like one leader manager and net new features, functionality under different one, maybe product, right? Of course, they're going to protect their turf. They're not going to talk to one another. The person who has all these fixes to do, they're not going to go back to the product and say, can we just fix it so that our processes and so forth, so we don't have as much to fix because, well, they're employed. So it's their vested interest that they're protecting. I think it goes back to that whole org design thing again. How are you organized in your company, right?
There's so much to talk about here. I want to have a whole podcast on technical debt. There's so much here that I want to talk about. We have yet to even talk about the maintenance of legacy systems and estimates on legacy systems when the people giving the estimates are not the people that built the legacy system. You bring on people to maintain a legacy system, or you have new developers and the old developers are gone. Like, your estimates are all garbage. It always takes a long time to do something, and you resist doing stuff to that other system, or migrating it, or touching it, or spending any time that involves the cost quality that you had noted before. Like, there's so many things I want to talk about in this tech debt category.
I think on that legacy one, oftentimes, because legacy, I mean, it's old technology, right? And people that are well versed with the latest technologies have this Dunning-Kruger effect. They're thinking, I can do that. I mean, that's old tech.
Old tech.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Right? I can read COBOL if I have 4 hours to read the code. I say, come on, that's not that hard. But that's where they're wrong, because they don't have documentation, or worse yet, they don't have the domain knowledge to fix things in whatever the old languages were.
It's not old tech, it's lost tech that point. Yeah. What program am I thinking of? The technology is so advanced that the human beings forgot. I don't know if it's like Wall-E or one of the, basically the people are living, is it Twilight Zone? I don't remember what it was. It's like the people are living on the ship, but the people that are living on the ship are like far removed descendants from the people that built the ship, and they've lost the ability to work on the ship. And
that's real. That is real when you're working on legacy.
That's this. Yeah, that's exactly this.
And so their estimates, though, coming back to that, right? Their estimates are very ambitious. I can fix that in a day.
Yeah.
And then 15 days later, they're still into it, right? Not their fault necessarily, but that's reality. It happens all the time. Yeah.
Going down a rabbit hole trying to figure out that exploratory work. I work with many developers who do that. And you know what? To be honest, I do that. I spent 2 hours on something that wasn't working. Normally, I won't spend that much time. 2 hours is an immense amount of time for me in one Pomodoro, like one go for me. Like 2 hours back to back, straight, uninterrupted, sitting at my computer. Like 2 hours is amazing. I can pound out a bunch of stuff that's super helpful to me in 2 hours. But I had this 2 hours I spent trying to figure out why an API response wasn't coming back properly. Total waste of time. And even when I'm doing it, I know I'm spending way more time. But it's like the next hit is going to work. The next hit is going to work. The next thing is going to work.
The gambler syndrome, right?
It really is.
The next spin's going to land the ball exactly on the number I'm gambling on.
It really is. But the idea that you need to keep this stuff in a separate roadmap and lobby and do whatever and have a big bang, or we have to have a big project to do this stuff, or introduce a new database, or cut over to a new database, or whatever. No, if you can't do it as a normal part of your normal stream work, it's highly likely that you can't do it.
Right.
Technical debt. This is why I think it should be a different podcast, because
we will do one.
It worries me as a product manager who used to be on development teams. It worries me because it's a product manager who's empowered with prioritization. Like, that's their role. Do they really understand what being versions behind, or what being on this old technology, or what being on several versions behind on the technology, or not migrating to the latest technology that's purposely built for this, or being on this old version of the language? Do they really understand what that means? And and can they illustrate in front of management, when management is playing golf, that golf swing guy who doesn't know anything about technology, couldn't care less, running a tech company, couldn't care less about technology. When they're dealing with that flippant attitude, can they make it matter? The product manager, can they take all the concerns of the dev team and understanding of technology and make it matter to that person? Can they weave that story and make it matter to that person? I'm super worried when like most of the product managers, the advice that you'll see online is partner with your engineering lead, have them help you do it, believe your dreams, get lunch all day, beefcake. That's not good enough.
Listen, you're describing a unicorn of a product manager who can actually do that, right? I found. I mean, there are very few that are technical enough to understand these things, right? So, yeah, we were talking before the podcast about teams wanting to upgrade to a new library or something like that.
Right.
But product people aren't necessarily aware of the reasons why that should be done or not done.
Visualization library is what we're talking about.
Yeah, but it could be anything though, right?
But visualization libraries are a really good example
Because they're in your face.
6 months, they're outdated.
They are. They move so fast. Yeah. Exactly. So I think it's a tall order. How do you partner with your engineering lead if they're the type of people that you're describing, right? It's hard. Yeah. It is hard.
The only other thing about technical debt, kind of that's wrapped up in legacy systems and technical debt to bring up here is, and it's only tangentially part of the shadow backlog, is sometimes you'll run into these hero developers, these wolf developers who have found themselves outside of a team. Also, the other moniker that is relevant to these people is the Paris Hilton developer.
I haven't heard that one.
Let me explain. I'm glad I could be the first one to lay this on you in this podcast.
Yeah,
All right.
I haven't.
You know, the wolf developer,
Yeah.
They work alone. They're only working on the latest fire. They're seen as a hero because they go from fire to fire. They're the people that can do things. The Paris Hilton developer is like they're famous for being famous. They're at all the parties. They're at all the release events. They're at all the launches. You got to get them in the room to have them in the room, but they're not really part of any team. They don't work on anything significant that you can remember. They just happen to be there whenever significant things happen. They're a developer that's really good at being there when significant things are happening.
So it's interesting because I actually have come across this.
This should be a podcast. Our podcast should have been the Paris Hilton developer.
It's a good title. I've come across architects that fall in this category. They go around.
I don't know if architects exist in any other category.
Fair point.
They go around with their little dog in their purse.
Yeah, they go around looking all important. They go ask the teams that they're working on, offer their 2 cents. No, don't pick up the glass that way. Pick it up this way. That's right. Not that it matters, but
Pinky's out.
Yeah, pinky out, and then that's it. They just hover around. They butterfly in and they butterfly out. So yeah, I've come across those guys.
Oh, I know. Like when you say it out loud, you're like, actually, I do know a few of those people. But you know what they do is they're really good at sticking around for a long time, staying in the media. What things is Paris Hilton good at?
Staying in the podcast.
Staying in the public eye. Yeah, right. Staying in the public eye, being seen, right? But also knowing where to be at a certain time. You can't do that unless you're hoarding all that knowledge that someone might eventually need.
Great point. Yes.
So again, the Paris Hilton developer is my example of someone who's hoarding knowledge for their own benefit, not necessarily for anyone else's benefit. The quiet developer that kind of just goes from team to team and mentors the new people, walks them through the code, does code reviews for other people. Like those people don't get any of the glitz and the cameras that the Paris Hilton developer gets.
They don't get to rescue the situation, right? This person does by hoarding knowledge.
They do rescue the situation, but when they do it, they attribute it to the team and they don't take it personally on their own.
So they're actual team player.
Right, but Paris Hilton is looking to be in front of the camera. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, don't be a Paris Hilton developer is what we're saying right now.
Exactly. Just carry your lapdog in your purse. Not all that knowledge.
Well,
man,
this is going to be a hard one to segue from, but I'm going to try. We said we would save personal tasks until its own category. Do you remember why we said we would save personal tasks? Oh, no. It was I had a solution, and then we chose not to implement that solution, so I'm going to do it on nights and weekends. Yeah. That was so those kind of personal tasks where the product manager says, I'm not going to do this. I don't want to spend time on it. Like it's outside the sprint goal, and it's outside of any of our goals for the quarter or whatever, right? Like it doesn't line up with any of our goals, so I don't want to spend any time on it. And the developer says, well, I think it's important. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to do it on nights and weekends. I'm going to show you that people like, listen, I'm conflicted on this one, and I'll tell you why. Because I do this. That's my confession. I do this.
You're saying, don't do as I do.
I do nights and weekends development to say, I'm going to go figure out how to query this database to go get the exact right data to use in this thing, and then tell the development team, hey, I can get this query. This is not exactly what we're talking about. What I'm doing is implementing like a feature or basically anything else, like an NFR, a technical debt thing, something that I think that we're falling behind on. So I'm going to go do it. Like I have where I do things like this is I'll say, hey, we don't have a program to query something from this database and query something from this database, and then put those two things together and send out a report, and so that we can make this other decision. And I could ask my development team to do it. It is development work, but it doesn't line up with any of our quarterly goals. it really doesn't take that long to get the data. The only pain is it's a manual one-time thing when I want to go get the data. So it takes me 30 minutes or whatever. But if I can spend an hour and a half in the middle of the night and automate the process, number one, I can make life easier on everybody that's looking for that data. Number two, I don't have to ask the development team to do it. Number three, I don't have to lobby to make it a quarterly goal to do internal automation to make whatever, XYZ easier, whatever process I'm trying to do. You know what I mean? So like I do this all the time. So it's tough for me to talk about this one because I certainly do.
If you're doing it, it doesn't matter. If you're doing it or a developer's doing it, there's an opportunity cost. You're doing something.
Sure.
If you're doing it out in your own time, evenings and weekends, you're still burning yourself out.
100%
right?
agree.
So, I mean, I'm a little conflicted on it for a different reason. Are we really constraining the innovation that people can bring to the table by not allowing this to happen, right? So maybe one thing to consider is reserve a bit of time every so often and have a hackathon. Let teams come up with basically what Google does, right? Let the teams come up with some innovation in that way.
Yeah.
So that's their channel.
Yeah.
At the same time, you can protect the main backlog and make sure that people aren't distributed across seen and unseen work, if you will.
I wonder, I don't see this going away. This is what I'm saying.
As long as people are there, they won't go away.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I don't see this going away. But I wonder, 20 years from now, if the broad view of product development, I wonder what the number of loading your developers down per week would be. So like what you just said, it sparked an idea in my head, which is like maybe I don't want to load my developers like in America, 40-hour work week. Like that's the standard. Some people will say 45. They're trying to squeeze a little more out of you, whatever. Right? I want to think like, what if the work week in the future is like 25 hours and we're reserving another 10 hours, right? Because some of those hours that are spent at work are spent on purely administrative stuff that's it doesn't advance your work at all. So there are some hours to do that. Let's say we're only going to load developers down to 25 hours a week, and then we're reserving that other 10 hours, whatever, 8 hours, 6 hours. We can negotiate on a number. But we're reserving a number of hours per week on just things that the developer sees that need to be corrected, that they can just jump on. Because again, they're the people closest to the problems. So it does make sense to reserve some of their time, this category, this personal task category, to reserve some of their time to counter what I'm saying, which is I do this. I can't expect my developers to not do this because if I'm doing it and I'm leading the team, I'm basically setting the example that people are going to see and they're going to follow my example. Sure. So I guess what I'm saying is I am leading and propagating this. So can I alter the system? Because I can't alter my behavior. My behavior is set in stone. Like that's the real fix here is, Brian, don't do that. Or if you do it, just shut up. Like don't tell anybody. I almost cursed on the podcast. Don't tell anybody that you do it. Because then other people see you doing it. You know, this is the same thing as like if I work for a boss who never takes vacation, now I can't take vacation. That's the same thing that we're talking about here. Yeah. It's the same effect. But the personal task one, if you know that you have this problem, if you have a problem, where's Mike Miller when I need him? This personal testing, like maybe you can reserve some capacity, just like you would reserve capacity to deal with technical debt. Okay, we're going to reserve 20% of our points in the sprint or whatever to know that technical debt stuff's going to need to be worked on. Let engineering choose what that's going to be, and we'll drop it in if we don't have something up in the roadmap. Maybe this is the same thing. We're going to reserve some time. If you don't need to do any of this stuff, then you just work on normal backlog items and everything's fine.
I like the idea of reserving time because one of the other things you can add in that mix is skills development. So reserve whatever hours you mentioned, right? Doesn't matter what the hours are.
It doesn't matter. You figure out the number.
For personal tasks as well as skills development, right? Upskill yourself. Learn something new.
I like that, yeah.
I like that too. But it doesn't, because really there's no room for that in day to day. If you think about what teams work on, they're always working on either the actual backlog or some other version of it, which is what we're calling the shadow backlog.
We probably can think about this number off the top of our head. Like every additional team that you're on, you add 20%. So right away, you cut your utilization. If we're going to talk about the dirty four-letter word that's called utilization, we're going to talk about that for a second. Let's break out like, okay, you're a developer on one team. What is your utilization to that team just off the start? Are we just going to say like 15% of your time is just pure overhead, like just on one team?
Meetings and stuff like that.
Let's call one team 20%. Being on one team, 20% of your time is already gone. So that's 80% potentially dedicated to development work that you do. Now let's say we're going to do this personal task / learning thing. So let's take 30% of your time and dedicate it to these things. So either personal tasks you have to do or learning and development. So now we're down to 50% of your time dedicated to actually servicing the backlog. So now we're at 20 hours a week, basically. I think that's fair. We're going to take care of your L&D. We're going to take care of your time to work on the stuff that you're super passionate about. We're going to take care of the time to work on things that you would like to workshop and prove concept, the hackathon type of stuff. Build it into your schedule.
I love this idea. You're basically exposing the skunk works at that point, right? You just say, well, don't hide things under the table. We're giving you the time, and you could make it fun. You could make it rewarding for them. If they come up with something, that's basically the Google thing. Yeah. Google have been doing this for a while. That on Fridays, the developers do this sort of thing, right? But I like the idea.
Well, the point of all this is I want it all transparent. I want it all clear. So maybe I'll carve some time out in our sprint review for you to bring this work forward that you're working on. And if the sprint review is not the appropriate place, because maybe the audience is not the appropriate place, then maybe the engineering team itself has like the hackathon review, like maybe every month or every 2 weeks or something like that. Maybe the engineering team, just the engineers in the matrix of engineering, maybe just the engineers go to a cross-team engineering session where they share what they've been doing for this type of stuff.
I would keep it separate from the sprint review because you possibly have stakeholders in the room.
Well, it depends on how big your company is, too.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. If you're small enough. I mean, obviously, if you have 60 plus developers in your program, okay, like that. I would agree with you. Yeah, let's do that separately. I, as a product manager, will become the person who goes to that optionally. Like I'm on the optional invite to see what cool new things.
It's for them, by them. So makes sense.
But they're also, as part of personal tasks, that's their time to pitch things. So sort of like it could be part demo, part pitch meeting at that point. Anyway.
I think so too. Yeah, I think this is good. Maybe I can try exploring some of that to the extent possible.
Yeah.
Even if it's theoretical now. Just treat that as an experiment. Try it out.
In personal tasks, we kind of talked about developers trying out new things. Talking about personal tasks is developers researching new technologies, or we talked a little bit about new libraries for charting and stuff like that, like new ways of querying, new technologies. That exploratory work of like, we know that this thing is upcoming in the backlog they're going to ask us to implement, and in advance of that, we have to try some different ways. Developers can go down a rabbit hole on that exploratory work, proof of concept work, like real things that are not directly in our product now, but maybe in the future. Again, people listening to the podcast know I have a label in my ALM system. You can put a label in whatever system you're using. I use Jira, but it could be any system that you're using. I put a label in there for capabilities, which means my team is doing exploratory work. This is not feature development. This is not CapEx development. This is OpEx. The team is exploring something new. Yeah. It may turn into nothing. It may turn into capitalizable features.
Sure.
I don't know yet. I have a tag for that because I want my developers coming to me and saying, we need to do this, and put some time into it and lobby for it, and then I'll put it in the backlog and we'll order it and it'll pop up. But not a lot of product managers can have that discussion and understand the need and understand the pitch, and again, like you said, be able to pitch it back to the business.
Be willing to pay for it. Yeah.
So the reason why exploratory work goes under the radar is because any break in anything I just explained, your ability as a developer to explain to me, the product manager, me, the product manager's ability to prioritize it in line with the rest of the stuff that we have, me, the product manager's ability to sell it to the people above me, like any breakdown in any of those things. I mean, assuming you have a product manager.
Right. Yeah. So, you're right that developers have a tendency to go down rabbit hole, especially tool selection. Let's use that as an example.
That's a good example.
New tools coming up, right? Well, let's try this new fine, shiny tool because that's the latest thing, and I hear other people are using it. Yeah. Maybe there's some value in that if they try it out. Yeah. So put guardrails around it if you want, but put it in the main backlog. Yeah. Right? And you got to be able to stand up and say, we're doing this because. Yeah. You can't do that.
That's the guardrails are, it's in the backlog, it's been prioritized, we're working on it, and then every day you're working on it, you're kind of giving your feedback about, hey, this is what we found. And maybe not every day that we're working on, but I mean, regularly in the backlog. What I find is, like, a developer wants to be left alone with a new tool to just spend, like, again, me in the middle of the night spending 2 consecutive hours working on this API. Like, I mean, how long? Like, 2 hours is, again, for me, at my level of where I'm at, is extreme amount of time to spend on one task. I don't know about different people's levels. 2 weeks might not be extreme for somebody else. I don't know what that time is, but if I'm doing Scrum and I'm in sprints and you've spent 2 weeks exploring something, man, you better be a top to bottom expert, whiz, have several proof of concepts like coded and working. Like, my problem with this exploratory work not being in the backlog is the developer's desire to just be left alone with a piece of tech for an extended period of time to really learn it inside out. And that is where we get into trouble. It's I can't have, like, as a product manager, I cannot have you disappearing down a rabbit hole for the whole sprint unless that expectation has been set when we pulled the item up.
So I agree, first of all, right? If you let it go, this your analogy of water applies here again, because people are just going to keep playing with the new shiny tool.
Yeah.
The other thing I've seen that's kind of really odd is I've seen developers, tech leads, let's say, or even architects say, we need to do an exploration or a spike sprint. We need to do a spike sprint. How am I going to sell that to leadership? A whole sprint, 10 days, let's say, times 6 people. Well, we're going to do all of that just for exploration.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to think through this and say, what's our opportunity cost? What are we not working on, right? That's really bringing value to the business. So again, it's not black and white. Not saying no, I'm just saying, but well, what gives, right? And having that discussion with those people above you, right? Leadership, and say, can we take a little bit of time?
Yeah.
So it's a negotiation with your teams, plus with your peers and your superiors, right?
Have you seen the Jeff Sutherland tweet about you should estimate spikes?
I think I have. Yes, I have seen that.
The reason I was looking for the post from Jeff Sutherland about spike work, sizing spike work, is because I think spike work needs to be just time boxed, and that's it. You can find out what you can find out in the time allotted. And then if you decide that you need to extend the time box or create another time box or whatever, then you create another time box of the same length. And then you can get around dealing with the size of spike. I guess you can get around that also by just saying all spikes are the same size.
Spikes should be able to be dealt with in a day or two, right?
But I was looking for that post because I was going to say spikes, the topic, all alone. Separate podcast. That's what I was going to pitch.
Oh yeah,
That's why I was going down that road, because I would open up with that. I'd open up with that tweet basically to say Jeff Sutherland says, hey, you can't estimate it if it doesn't have an estimate. So everything needs to have an estimate. That's the policy here at Brian and Ohm's HR company. Whatever.
What happened to the software company?
Who said we need to have an estimate? The category here was exploratory work, basically blowing up and becoming part of the shadow backlog because you never give your developers time to do exploratory work. I wonder about teams where exploratory work is a big part of the shadow backlog. I wonder how those teams do their refinements, because a lot of times in refinement, we're pulling up systems and we're calling in experts and we're getting their opinion on basically a lot of the answers for exploratory work. We're making room for them during that time to come in and give us answers that we otherwise would have to dedicate a person to, and that person would have to go chase down these things and whatnot. So I do this stuff in refinements, which is different than sprint plannings, where sprint planning assumes we already have these details. So I would assume you're not doing a lot of that kind of stuff. You know what else in exploratory work that can blow up is proof of concepts.
Oh yeah, definitely. Proof of concepts, especially if there's no scope bounding, right? And people will just keep working on it.
Often there isn't in a POC. It's very ambiguous.
So that needs to come with, how do we know when we're done with the POC? I mean, some sort of DOD, right? Some sort of definition of done on the POC. Plus having those frequent reviews of the POC and asking, is this enough?
Right.
Or do we keep going?
Right. I think you just nailed it right there. That's how we know we're done. We demo it on a regular basis. Honestly, more frequent than the sprint release, like the normal sprint end cadence. I think it should be more than that. And then we ask, here's the work that was done. Are we done?
So on the cadence, right? We don't even need a cadence. As soon as you put a piece of functionality in there, get feedback. Just say, well, here, we just added this. And at some point ask, what's missing? Asking that.
I like the world that you're living in, because some other developers live in the world of, I'm just going to keep throwing stuff in the release pipeline. Well, they may see that as their actual work, and the actual releasing to production, the pipeline, like executing the pipeline and having it roll out to the environments, they might see that as additional overhead or somebody else's job if they can ship it to another team, like a DevOps release team or something like that. So you have a development team that just keeps throwing stuff into the pipeline and never actually running a release. So then when they finally go to run a release, you got all these merge conflicts and stuff that's got to be figured out. A big disaster because they're not releasing. I only call that out because I did live in that world in a previous part of my career. I don't live in that world anymore, so I don't talk about it anymore.
Right.
But
that world is real.
It's very real.
Yeah, it's real, and a lot of people live in that world. So just be mindful of that. I think that people listening to this should not walk away by kind of taking just one thing that we say, right? That exploratory work, okay, well, gotta be careful. No, we're not saying that. What we're saying is it's on a case-by-case basis, right? How quickly do you need to do that POC? What do you need to learn? How fast? And size work that way, but put it in the main backlog.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Yes. If your policy is we don't pull anything into the sprint to get done unless it has points, so now we have to have this big heartache about Do we point our spikes or not point our spikes? Well, I don't know. Like, you don't need any of that. Like, pick a number, throw it in there. Or don't pick a number.
Don't pick a number
and just time box it, and you're done with it. Like, you don't need to be complicated about this.
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, and if you time box it, what if you don't land it? Well, fine, extend it, right?
Okay,
based on feedback. That's all.
I mean, yeah. Like I don't. Again, there's a reason I could have a whole podcast about that specific topic, because people get ridiculous. Like, ridiculous. Who cares?
That's so
like,
dogma.
The point of the spike is I need the learning. I need to know. I need that ambiguity knocked down. So I'm basically willing to pay any cost to have it get knocked down until you tell me. Until it gets too expensive, like until it becomes so expensive that I'm not willing to pay it anymore.
Right.
So how can we control that? Oh, I know how we can control it. We can just time box it and say, have we learned enough in the time allotted? No. Okay, let me give you another time segment.
I also think there's another element to it, which is just describe up front, what is it that we hope to learn?
Yeah.
So we know when we're done. Otherwise, we just keep learning, and the developers will keep going with the team.
I mean, that is the old Arguing Agile other side of this. The other side of this is let me, the developer, figure out when I'm done and just go away. Leave me alone. Why do I have to keep coming to you asking permission to have more time?
We like getting paid, right? We get money when customers buy real products.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. But also, like, you have empathy for their position, which is like, it takes a lot of time to really understand the new technologies and understand all the business cases through it. The point that you're raising, which also is my point, is nobody can go off on their own and burn a bunch of company money on their own, like without checking in with anybody. Nobody in the business, product managers, executives, nobody works like that in the business. Even C-level executives, you can't just burn an infinite amount of money and time and expect to not have to report that to somebody.
Expensive too.
To be accountable for that to somebody.
Exactly.
I had two other quick things that I think are quick. We'll see, which is parallel teams / tracks of work. What I mean by that is multiple products being serviced by one team. If you have multiple products, usually what happens is as the team members are moving fast and transitioning between products, there's that switching cost. Part of paying that switching cost is they'll just do something real quick over here and then come back to the main thing they were working on.
So they're incurring debt the whole time. They just don't know it.
Right. Yeah. That's part of the shadow backlog. Is like you don't really realize that they've come off of the main thing to go do 1-2 little quick fixes on this other thing, and then they're popping back off. You don't notice it until they're gone 2 days and like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah, and that's made even worse by who's judging them. Like, who's actually measuring what they're working on? So if they're being measured on this main work that they're doing and they kind of just go away somewhere and come back, then they're going to want to rush things over there so they can come back to this because all eyes are on this.
Right.
It's just bad practice. It's just too many. 2 balls in the air is 1 ball too many, probably.
Parallel teams. I wanted to combine this with another category. It was either like non-transparent, don't understand the, like maybe one of these parallel tracks that's happening is a very, very old legacy product that maybe they don't, like the company doesn't want to staff product managers for.
Right.
So it's unclear about who sets the priority for, and also unclear about when things get worked on. It doesn't have a clearly defined roadmap that's transparent. And it's not clear when they're making releases. The customers are still using it and are happy when they get new releases. They can't be guaranteed that they're going to get a new release every week or whatever. Like that cadence has changed because the business is no longer funding.
The business may well be wanting customers to get off of the old legacy and jump onto one of their newer versions. Yes.
This is a very passive-aggressive category right now.
Indeed.
This multiple products, one team, like this is a problem. I guess if it's multiple products with one team and one product manager who is also over all the products, then I guess it's a little easier because it's one team working out of multiple backlogs, and then they have one sprint, but that one sprint is composed of different products. Yeah. But I mean, I guess the point of that category, though, as far as the shadow backlog goes, is like I've also been on teams where as programs are dissolved or as teams are dissolved or whatever, like the people that are left join another team, and then the maintenance of that product that's in sunset mode is also added to this other team's responsibilities, or sometimes it's not added to the other team's responsibilities. I was once with a program that was completely spun down. They only kept 2 developers, and they added those 2 developers. They added one to one team and one to the other. But those 2 developers were the ones that got calls from the project managers when the project managers at that organization own the customers. Don't ask me how. I didn't set this up. The project managers own the customer relationships. Yep. And the customers would say, hey, we have this problem with the software. We found a bug. We need it fixed. And the project managers would go to the product managers who own those developers to say, we need this developer for a certain amount of time to do these fixes or whatever, and they would interrupt their sprints that are in progress, their committed work that was in progress, because this stuff would come up as like support work. In that instance, all the project managers and the product managers had good working relationships, but it very easily could have been the project managers go directly to the developer to say, hey, we need you to fix this. And now there's a stream of work in the shadow backlog.
So yeah, and it's really not all that pleasant for the poor developer who's caught in this thing, right? I mean, they have multiple masters.
One of the two left because they didn't want to work on that environment, and then we had one developer that did all the maintenance for that sunset product line that still brought in a significant amount of revenue for the company. So that's your like $1 million developer. So basically, like that developer they were not the kind of person who would ask for like, hey, you're going to give me 50% or whatever, I'm going to leave. But they very well could have.
They could win the lottery, and now the company's in deep trouble.
The only other category that we have left is dealing with NFRs, which is usability. Like, I want to go make this change to the UI, like a UI front-end developer will do this. I've seen them do this often. Hey, I need to add this new toggle to the map, or this. I want to add a dark mode to the map. Nobody says everyone else has got dark modes and we don't have dark modes, and I feel real strongly that we should have a dark mode because I'm a developer. I like only working on everything is dark mode all the time. Live my life on dark mode.
Yeah, definitely. Everything you just said starts with the letter I. So yeah, these are solo people that just basically have their own opinions on what should be in the product, and they go work on it.
Maybe because scalability and performance, I've seen developers get lost down the rabbit hole of scalability and performance. But performance of, hey, I need to go and pull all the SQL queries in our system and optimize every single query. Performance is one of those things that the more you work on it, the more you can work on it.
It keeps going on and on and on, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've seen people like that are very passionate about their work, and they're like, no, I know I can improve this 2% more, right? It's like, oh, just go work on something else. Nobody cares about that. Yeah. It's already fast enough.
They care.
You know,
they care.
They themselves do.
Yeah, this is very close. The NFRs thing is very close to the personal task list that we were talking about. Scalability, for example, like, where do you stop at scalability? You know, the system needs to handle 100 concurrent users. The system needs to handle 1,000 concurrent users. Do you stop at 100 times what our current normal traffic is?
The rule of thumb is 10, isn't it? So stop at 10 and then build in auto scaling.
Yeah. I think this category is the personal task list, because the more that someone is concerned and digs into a category and keeps working on it as their kind of like pet project of, I think about network engineers this way, is like, oh, I got to optimize the network and I got to make sure we got bandwidth for this and redundancy, failover. Basically, failover.
Especially with cloud tech now. But I remember those days too. And then you add on top of that all the nuances. You fail over, but you can't have data from Germany outside of Germany.
Right.
All of those little nuances layer on top of that.
Yeah, a lot of that NFR category is the personal task list. Now that I'm thinking about it a little bit deeper. So
I think you can go a long way towards, eliminating quite a bit of that by defining the attributes that you need up front.
Yeah. And
putting guardrails there, right? If it scales to 100 times, is that better than 50 times? Because we've never had that before, so maybe stop and just monitor. There are times probably better spent putting in some application monitoring so it reports out the peaks and valleys, right? During the day or whatever.
Monitoring is a great one too, because like there's always one additional detail.
Just monitor anything.
One additional detail. You just gotta have, it'll be perfect if I have one additional detail. That's another great one to.
That's true.
Well, that's the podcast today of, the shadow backlog. The Hey Buddy backlog.
Buddy backlog. I like that. Yeah. If you're looking at a backlog, that might be your Robin if you're Batman, or it could just be a shadow backlog.
I think it's your Joker if you're Batman.
Well, it's your
worst enemy.
Standing over your shoulder.
We only kind of talked about all the different types of things that can contribute to the shadow backlog. We didn't really talk about what to do with them, how to resolve them or whatever. Maybe that's part 2. Maybe that's a
second part,
completely separate podcast. I don't know. If you have good backlog management, if you're doing backlog refinements, if you're involving your team, if you're getting the right stakeholders in there, you can do a lot to mitigate this. So I think when we talked about how you manage the backlog is not clear. It's not transparent. Like that is the kind of the crux of why this is a big problem, is people don't understand your backlog management. Maybe they're not invited to it and they should be. Maybe you're not casting a wide enough net to bring people into your refinements,
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Let's do a second part on what to do about these things. Yeah, I think that would be a good one. It may not be as long as this. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, maybe not, but I don't know what the title of that one is. Like killing the shadow backlog. It's shining a light on the illuminating the yeah. Well, if you have an idea for what part 2 would be, hit us up in the comments.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like and subscribe.